What's up, guys? This is Brent with 247parts.com, the best place online to buy your John Deere parts. Now, in this video, we're going to be putting a home maintenance kit on this John Deere Z330R, and the home maintenance kit you will need for your 330 is the LG265. So let's go ahead and start with the oil change. So first thing is getting your oil draining, which you're going to have this hose right here on the right-hand side of the engine. But what we're going to want to do is push that hose out, and we're going to actually want to push it down between the frame that the engine sits on and where your fuel tank is. There's going to be a little opening right through here, and then what we want to do is have our oil drain pan sitting down below this point right behind our deck. Now once we get that into position, you should have your drain hose right here, and this is just going to have a twist off cap on it. So this could get a little messy. You may want to have some paper towels nearby, but we're just going to twist that cap off and then just allow that oil to drain right there into the pan. And to help with that draining, we can also let off on the filler cap up top. This is going to allow a little more air to breathe, let that oil completely drain on out. All right, now while we've got that oil draining, next we can move here to the air filter. Go ahead and pop that up. We're going to see a clamp here on the bottom side. This is just a hand twist clamp. We're just going to simply loosen that up, pull back a little bit here on our hose, pull out on our filter. We can go back in with the new filter. Simply, once again, just pull back on that hose. Make sure your filter's seated down in that hose, and we can pull our clamp up just a little bit here where we can see it, and we're just going to twist that back down into place and then close it up. Now, everything up until this point has been toolless, but once we get to these spark plugs, now we're going to have one on each side. You're going to have the spark plugs in your kit. They are in NGK BPR4ES or part number 6578. But what you're going to want to have is a 13/16 spark plug socket. So this is just going to have a little bit of rubber on the inside to grab that spark plug to help pull it out. And then you're also going to want a spark plug gap gauge. Now you can get these at all of your local hardware stores, automotive parts stores, but we want to check the gap on our spark plugs before we put them into the machine. On these specifically, we are going to want them to be at the 0.040 mark here, even better the 0.030, just to make sure that they are gapped correctly. Now to do this change, we're going to want to reach in here, pull the boot off of our spark plug just like that. We're going to take our ratchet and spark plug socket, get that down on the plug itself, and we just want to break this loose just like that. And once we get that loose, you should be able to remove it the rest of the way here just with your extension and socket. And just like that, we've got the old plug out. Now, if you've never checked gap on a spark plug before, what we're doing is we're looking at the gap between this top pin and the center electrode here. So what we're doing is here on this gap gauge, we can see we have a thin side, and as we spin this around, it gets thicker, and that is what's going to give us our gauge. So what we would do is simply put this in on the thinnest side here, start to rotate this around, and then once we feel resistance, then we know that that's where we have our gap at. If we needed to change that, we can use the center hole here to either pull up on that electrode or use the flat side here to push down to change that gap. Now, going back in with that spark plug, I just get it put here in your spark plug socket. Go back into the hole right where we came out of. Get that started and tightened up by hand. And then once you have that tight by hand, you saw that it wasn't much that I had to turn on that ratchet to break it loose. So we want it to be the same here when we're going back on. We don't want these super tight, but we do want to make sure that they're making good contact with the engine and that they are tight to the turn of the ratchet. So once you get it tight here, don't want to tighten down too much. Quarter turn. Pull it out, replace your boot, and then just make sure to do the same thing on the other side. Next here, we'll work on everybody's favorite part, which is going to be the fuel filter over here on the left-hand side. So what we're going to have is two clamps, one on the top here. Just need to take some pliers, run that clamp back and off of the nipple of that filter. Same here on the bottom. Take that off. Run that back down the hose. Then it's just a matter of working this filter off the end of these fuel hoses. You're going to get a little bit of fuel spillage here, and that's all right. Just want to make sure you get that filter off. And we can toss that one. Now, whenever you're working on the bottom side of that hose, this is going to be the end that is coming from the fuel tank, and then your top side is going to the engine. So whenever you're looking at this new filter, you're going to have an arrow on that filter right there at the bottom. That's going to be the direction of flow. So we want to make sure the bottom of that arrow is going into the fuel tank side. So we're going to put that in, work it into that hose and get it seated all the way there to the top. Then we can connect our top side. And then lastly, just replacing those clamps. All right, now once we've gotten all of that done, we are going to be ready to put our plug back on. Just go ahead and grab a blue rag, paper towel, whatever you've got here. Make sure to clean up any oil spillage you might have had. Clean up the cap here. And we're just going to get it put back on to our drain hose here. Get that tightened back up. And then now what we want to do is we have our drain pan right here underneath the back of the deck. What we're going to do is we're going to push it forward just a ways here, because now we're going to be changing out that oil filter, and it sits just a little further forward where it's going to drain out. So we want to make sure, get that in position, or we're not going to make a mess all over the floor. Now, there is not a great angle to get a good picture here of our oil filter, but it sits right here behind our filler neck here. So what I'm actually going to do is pull out our dipstick, get it up and out of the way, but right here is where our oil filter is going to be. First thing that we're going to try is the cap style filter wrench. And I say first thing we're going to try because sometimes whenever you go to do this first oil change, these filters can be really, really stubborn. So we're going to try this cap style first, and then if we have to, we can always break out a strap style. And looks like this one is going to move for us pretty easy here. So we're just going to go ahead and keep loosening this off. Just like so. You can actually take that cap out, and you're going to have some spillage here right on top, but there is actually a reservoir here that is made for that oil spillage. You just want to make sure that your drain pan is underneath. So off with the old. Before we go back on with that new, we just want to do a little bit of cleanup here. Make sure all around where that filter mounts on that we don't have any gasket that's left over. Make sure to get that clean, and while you have that filter out of the way, you might as well go ahead and clean up the reservoir underneath. Push all that oil over here to the hole. Get that as clean as possible, because if not, you're just going to catch dirt on that spot where you leave any of that engine oil. All right, so then we can go ahead and break out our new filter here, and you'll notice that the gasket is dry. So you want to get some of that new fresh oil that comes in that kit. Get a little bit here on your finger and go ahead and get that gasket lubricated with that brand new engine oil, and then just go ahead and get that filter started on. Now, when we're going back on with these oil filters, we want them tight, but we only want them hand tight. So as tight as you can go there by hand is what you are looking for. And then once we have our new filter on there, now we are ready for oil. One quart in, and then on the next one, we're gonna go just almost a full quart. These are usually good at about 1.8. So we're not gonna go quite all the way full here, and then we're gonna give it a check. Then your last step is to go ahead and check that oil level, fire everything up, make sure that you have no leaks on this mower, and then you are good to go. So just remember, if you are looking to do the service on your John Deere Z330R, that part number is gonna be LG265. Also, if you need any other John Deere parts for any of your John Deere equipment, make sure to check us out at 247parts.com. And as always, guys, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Hey guys, make sure to go buy your parts right here and subscribe right here.